There's that joke about how Netflix will pretty much fund any old terrible film idea, no matter how badly written it is, and I dip in and out of Cynical Reviews channel where he makes videos ripping them apart and laughing at the worst ones because it's funny, but it's just bizarre to think how much money they all still make. And if I was a smart man, maybe that's what I would do. Maybe I'd write a teen rom-com for Netflix, because I'm certain I could do something much better than The Kissing Booth or whatever else. I'm not a smart man though. I know that even if I did try, I'd get bored a quarter of the way through and lose all motivation because it's not a project I'd be passionate about, but nonetheless it's fun to imagine for a bit. Like, sometimes I think creativity comes best when you give yourself limitations, because then it's like a puzzle, trying to figure out what would fit, whereas having total freedom to create anything can be a bit daunting at times. So the puzzle here is, if I were to write a teen rom-com for Netflix, what would I do? And to keep it clear, this would be a film that A, has to fit the conventions, and B, also be something interesting to that target audience. So let's say this has to be set in a high school, the main characters have to be school students, and they all have to look ridiculously glamorous with idealistically sunny settings like all these teen films do. And the title of the film has to sound like a generic rom-com title, I try to make it artistically good because, there are good teen rom-coms out there. I'm not saying they're all terrible, but yeah, I try to make it artistically good whilst also still needing to fit those conventions and attract that same demographic audience and, keep it entertaining in that same way. So here's my 4 ideas for what I would do. They're not fleshed out, they're just simple premises as I came up in the bath with a notepad, but here we go. Look back and smile. Like I said, generic titles. Look Back and Smile would be about a high school romance between 2 students that goes terribly wrong. Not like in any great horrific way or tragedy or anything, but what starts out as something wonderfully romantic and idealistic quickly sours as they argue over pointless things and have fallouts, get jealous, and basically cause each other a lot of stress in the way bad relationships do. The film would be the 2 of them slowly realising they just aren't compatible for each other, and what it's then really about is how to end a relationship on good terms, sort of where you're wishing each other the best, recognising you'd both be stupid to keep breaking up and getting back together over and over, not bearing grudges, but just, wish each other the best and move on. And it would end a bit like the end of the film The Beach. DiCaprio sitting in an internet cafe, seeing that picture of him and his old friends and feeling nostalgic about it. There'd be a similar ending here with one or maybe spliced shots of both the characters looking at a photo or some object or something that reminds them of each other and sort of smiling and remembering that in spite of how terrible the relationship was, there are some fond memories and good times they can take from it and still look back on happily. But basically it annoys me how over idealistic all romantic films are. Why can't it just be about an ordinary relationship where the 2 of them aren't destined for each other? I'd want a film to remind kids that not all relationships are the height of divinity. Sometimes they're a bit bleak, but even when they are, that's okay. There's still things you can learn and take from those experiences and move forwards with. That one's less an actual story than just an overarching premise, so I haven't really given you much there, but let's move on to the second one. Opposed attraction. I was going to call it opposites attract, but then I realised that's kind of the complete reverse of what this film's premise is, because the point of this film would be more about, can people with 2 completely opposed political beliefs still love each other? And I mean, of course they can, if they've developed a strong level of emotional maturity that it's hard to develop though. We can get on with people we fundamentally disagree with, but can we love them romantically? Will the differences there be a little too big of a barrier that would gradually distance you from each other over a long enough time? And in this socially divided world of Brexit and Trump and everything else, people are getting worse at getting on with people they disagree with. People struggle to tolerate it now. So here we have a teen rom-com about one very left-wing character and one very right-wing character who are both attracted to each other. And they know they're both attracted, but they also can't stomach the other's political beliefs and are sort of like, you know, will be able to love each other just fine once you drop your stupid opinions and agree with mine. So they're both trying to sort of desperately convince the other of their own opinions because then they'll be alright, but, you know, of course, that's the very cause of their difficulties. Not the beliefs themselves, but how determined they are to force those beliefs onto each other. And so the film would track their change, them learning to soften a little and stake less claim in it all, you know, both still holding their opinions mostly, but compromising on some things, respecting each other's, and, you know, not trying to change the others, but accepting the differences more, you know, and realising there are some things within those two extremes that they both can agree on anyway. Yeah, so that's the romance of that one. It's this kind of learning for two opposed positions to actually find some unity. And also, it's a semi-separate idea. You could do something like that, but as a deliberately ridiculous parody of Romeo and Juliet, where the star-crossed lovers are their political beliefs, and the comedy would be sort of taking all of the drama and poetry of Shakespeare's play and then making it a really mundane high school story. And it'd be hard to tread that line there, but that could be fun. So that's a semi-separate idea. Valentines Messenger. More of a fun one here as well. It's all set on one specific day at school, Valentine's Day, obviously, where in the morning, through some sort of Valentine's post thing the school does, the main character gets a Valentine's Day card. The problem is that it's an anonymous one. The main character doesn't know who it came from. And this isn't a character with great self-esteem. I imagine it being a bloke, but maybe it's more interesting if this character is a girl, actually. So let's say that. She wasn't really expecting a card, so to get one means the world to her, and the film is now like a mystery of her trying to figure out who sent it before the end of the school day. Like, you know that really tense Liam Neeson film where he's trapped on a plane trying to figure out which one of the passengers has a bomb before it explodes? It'd be a bit like a non-tense comedic version of that premise. You know, a bit like that Romeo and Juliet one a minute ago. It'd be filmed really dramatic, like this serious, tense film, so that the comedy comes from how dramatic such an undramatic premise is made to seem. Yeah, a bit like The World's End being filmed really dramatic when it's essentially just a pub crawl. And I think how it'd end is that she finds the guy who sent this, did it as a joke that his friends put him up to, and, you know, once she finds out, this guy feels bad and guilty about it, and he sort of suggests they then do go on a date, but she turns it down because that would just be out of pity and that would make her feel even worse. And then the ending is sort of the realization, never mind. It's not the end of the world. It seemed dramatic and intensely important at the time, but it doesn't matter. And the close friends she's had as her kind of sidekicks who have helped her unravel this mystery are all still there for her, you know, and she takes comfort knowing she has these friends, and this shared friendship kind of becomes the happy ending that says, you know, high school romances aren't all they're cooked up to be. It's the friendships that matter much, much more at that age in your life. Possession of Love. Not a good title, actually. That makes it sound a bit sort of predatory. That's not what I meant. I chose that title because I was thinking of that Aurora video I made quite a while back on love, where I talked about how some people search for love like it's a possession to hold, like you're looking for a concrete gain, you know, this external thing that once you have it makes you feel better, when obviously that's not how love works. It's something that comes from within you, something that opens you outward to the world. So this would be a film about a bloke who's never had a relationship, hasn't lost his virginity, and for him, that's something he's really unhappy about, and it's turned him quite bitter. Like, you know that poisonous sort of mindset that some people can have. In this example, it's a bloke, obviously not always, but you know, where the fact he hasn't lost his virginity is like a wound to his ego and his identity, and he becomes, you know, he's bitter to the point where he starts to blame women altogether for it, as though all the women in the world ganged up and made this personal attack on him. You know, that sort of mindset. The main character's like that, and it sort of plays into all that comedy you do get from the many teen comedies about lads desperately trying to get laid, and it's got that side to him, but there's also a darker edge here, and there's all that kind of, I'm such a nice guy, I treat girls so much better than all these other people do approach, not realising the whole issue with that approach is thinking that just being nice will make someone love you, like it's a straightforward transaction. I act kind, therefore you have to fall in love with me. Sort of like in Groundhog Day, actually, how Phil thinks pretending to like everything Rita likes will make her fall for him, when obviously it doesn't, because it's not sincere. It's treating her like a possession that he can win by playing the right cards, rather than actually caring with any authenticity. And so in that sense, it's that same realisation our main character would get here, that you find love when you stop treating it like a possession and just open up as a sincere human being, just having fun interacting with these other sincere human beings, and then falling in love through the beauty of that interaction. I guess you find love when you're actually looking for love rather than a possession. And the main character would, well, first he'd realise that while he himself places all this great pressure and emphasis on losing his virginity, that no one else actually cares. No one is bothered that he's a virgin. No one's laughing at him for it. It's not an issue anywhere except inside his head, you know? And that will be one of the great revelations for him. The other will be to, basically to stop treating love like a possession. And it's kind of in doing that he actually finds genuine love, but also because of the warmth and sincerity of this love interest that it is that enables him to change in the first place. And you'd have to be careful doing that, and also the love interest would need to be an important fleshed out character beyond just being the love interest, and carry some sort of dynamic as well, but you get the basic premise there. Those are my 4 ideas for teen rom-com films. I did actually have more, but I don't think this sort of video merits being any longer than this. So maybe maybe I'll write the other ones on Patreon or something. As it is, that's the video. 4 ideas for films I'll never be bothered to make myself, but would be kinda cool in my opinion. Like if you liked it. Comment any thoughts or variations, or film ideas of your own, actually, that'd be interesting, if you have any. Subscribe if you haven't done, and support me on Patreon if you should wish to do so, but otherwise, hopefully see you next time.